were there certain skills that you had to intentionally, seek out to build, or different trainings? Like, how did you think about your evolution?
As I mentioned at the beginning, I wasn't particularly focused on a specific destination. I don't really think I was ever thinking particularly about an evolution, but what I did do was whatever stage of my career, I always really dove very, very deeply into whatever I was doing. So in the earlier parts of my career, for example, I am an MRI radiologist, very focused on research in terms of developing new MRI techniques for cardiovascular, kidney function, and other areas. And I was intensely focused on it. I at one point had a lab with 3 R01 grants. Did a lot of publishing. I think that is what led to my election to the National Academy, was that work. Super interested. When it came to now thinking about, okay, how do we actually improve research across an entire institution? That's a really interesting question. How do you actually, what are the important skills and toolkits that we need to provide to our researchers so they can be super successful? So extending from beyond myself and my little MR world to, oh, how can I help the people who are doing discovery science all the way to people who are doing population and implementation science, and what tools do they need? And so I really studied that carefully. And that's actually what led me to go to business school to do the MBA, because I felt like there were probably more skills that I could really learn. And that was incredibly helpful, whether it was strategic planning all the way to operations, how to create efficiencies, improve efficiencies, for example, all the way to crisis communication. How do we communicate more effectively about what we want to do? And then I got into the question of our broken healthcare system. Like, why is our healthcare system so broken? What is it about the financial model? What is it about how we run? And then as we already talked about, I started thinking about, well, what could really make a difference? What could leapfrog us from this current situation into a world in which we challenge the existing paradigms in a really disruptive way? And I actually think the technology can really do that. And so I've really immersed myself in that. And I'm actually studying data science now. I'm trying to understand, trying to do a little coding in Python. I'm not a coder at all, but I'm trying to learn a little bit just for fun, just to understand a little bit. So I think that's really been the way in which I've thought about everything. I deeply immerse myself in whatever it is. And then and amazingly, these things that seem completely unrelated and disconnected actually have served as a really strong foundation for me. And I use lessons from each of these different phases of my life in really unexpected ways. So I'm a champion in not being overly programmed and overly directed, I guess, or at least that's how I've ended up.